Hi there, this is Heather of Shutterbug 101. Today we'll be going over the Olympus E-M10 IV and the 75 to 300 millimeter lens. Let's get started. The Olympus E-M10 IV is a 20 megapixel micro four thirds sensor mirrorless camera that has in-body stabilization and is perfect for the beginner or hobbyist photographer. This camera has a tilt and flip down touch LCD screen, has manual, scene, and creative modes, and has a continuous drive of 15 frames per second. It also has 4K video up to 30 frames, wireless built-in, weighs less than a pound, and has USB charging for when you're on the go. Today we'll be discussing the doors, buttons, and menus to help you navigate this camera a bit easier. So the E-M10 IV, of course, is the fourth version of the E-M10 line, if you couldn't have guessed. Is going to be their beginner series. It's also going to be their simplest model. As it is specifically grounded to photography, it does have video features, but it doesn't have very fast frame rate options. It also doesn't have a mic port, so it's not built for video, just can do video. When it comes to the basic features of it that we went over, it's highly relatable to number 3, except it's a little bit faster in its continuous drive, and has, some updated pieces. But other than that, it's going to be very similar to the Mark III walkthrough that I've done, but because it's been requested, I will go ahead and do it for those that are specifically looking for this model. The whole reason I wanted to try out the 75 to 300 versus the lens that it came with was because I've already done that on another camera. So I want to try and knock out some of these lenses alongside bodies that maybe have the same lens that I've done in previous reviews. That way, you guys can get a little bit of both. So because a micro four thirds sensor is smaller than a crop sensor and definitely by full frame, what they do is they design these lenses to a full frame standard, a 35 millimeter standard, if you will. The 75 to 300 is not an accurate range representation for this camera. On say a full frame camera, which you could not physically do, by the way, would be a 75 to 300. Now, because the sensor, it crops in at 2 times, you're actually doubling this distance. So this lens actually goes to 600 millimeters. And although I didn't get a lot of luck of doing many bird shots, there just weren't many readily available to be photographed, I was able to get quite close to some rabbits that would never let me get that close with the lens that came with this camera. So it is something to keep in mind when shopping for a camera. If you're wanting something travel friendly with a big distance, that's pretty excellent. The camera itself is lighter than a pound. So it's a great option to get you some distance and a travel-friendly setup. On the front of the camera here, you can see we have our button here to release the lens, which you just turn this way and release. And it has the sensor open and available to put the lens back on. You're going to line the red dot up with the red dot. Turn and click into place. Now, something to know about Olympus sensors is they actually have the truest to the term self-cleaning sensor. When you'll see that like on some Canons, that type of thing, when you turn the camera off, it'll say sensor cleaning on the back. All it's really doing is vibrating the sensor to knock off any dust, but what Olympus does is they have somewhat of like a sticky trap around the edge of the sensor, so any dust that gets knocked off gets stuck into that trap, which I thought was like the coolest thing because no other camera has that. So a little tidbit about Olympus. On the side of the camera here, you can see we have a little door. This door is going to have 2 ports. On the top, you'll find that is your USB port. This, of course, is going to be how you charge the camera, whether at home or on the go, because the charger that comes in the box is going to be a cord and an AC adapter. You can buy an external charger for this, but of course it does cost extra. It does not come with that. And this, of course, will be your transfer port as well. If you don't have a card reader, you can actually plug your camera into the computer and transfer your pictures off of the camera. Although I would just recommend using a card reader. And then the second port there is going to be your HDMI port. So if you wanted to show pictures that you just went and took at the nearest garden to your family and friends, you could do that. You could show videos that you've taken on a TV or an external screen of any kind, like a computer, that type of thing. Anything that is HDMI compatible, you'll be able to do that and get more than, you know, what you would see here on a 3-inch screen. On this side of the camera, you can see no extra doors or anything there. All smooth, very simplistic. At the bottom of the camera here, you can see that we have our tripod mount for mounting it on a tripod. And then we have our battery door here that will also house our SD card port here. So it does take one SD card and the rechargeable battery. It does say on the door here which direction the battery and the SD card go in, so keep that in mind when putting your SD card and your battery in your camera. On the top of the camera here, you can see that we have quite a few buttons and dials and switches. Here we have our on and off switch, and if you keep pushing up, it will make this pop-up flash pop up here. If you don't wish to use it, you just put it on down. This button here is going to be our quick menu button. So what this button does is it allows us to, on screen here, change any of our regular settings that we would change on a regular basis. And you would change these with your directional buttons here. So up at the top left, we have our ISO, which we can change from auto to a specific number. This is our sensitivity to light. The next one there is going to be your white balance. This is going to be for changing the temperature of the photo from really warm to really cool. I would recommend just keeping this on auto unless you feel like being creative. This is to fine tune our white balance if it wasn't on auto. We have our picture mode here, which controls how it displays the color. I think natural is the best way to go. You have sharpness, you can have contrast, you can adjust the saturation, the gradation. You can change all of these settings before you even take a picture, which is pretty great. Then you have your autofocus modes, which you do have here SAF, which is going to be single autofocus for subjects that are still not moving. Then you have CAF, which is going to be continuous autofocus. This is for when a subject's moving, so it can continually focus as the subject moves. You have MF for manual focus. That's going to be using the front ring on the lens here to manually focus in. And then you have single autofocus with manual focus, and then you have continuous autofocus with tracking. So it's able to track a moving subject rather than just continually look for movement. Then we have face priority. You can make it face and eye priority, face priority, or you can turn that off if you're not taking pictures of people. We have your autofocus area, so where your camera is autofocusing, you can use all 121 focus points. You can use a general area that has 9 focus points, or a very specific focus with 1 autofocus point, and wherever you want that focus point to be, which is especially easy to do using the touchscreen. You have your flash modes here if you have your flash on. We have our drive mode here, so I had it on silent mode because I was taking pictures of the bunnies. I want to be respectful. So you have single mode. All the ones with the single square are going to take a single picture when you push the button down. One's just an anti-shock mode, one is a silent mode. Then you have the picture stacked on top of each other. That's going to be your continuous modes. You have continuous high, continuous low, all in auto shock and silent mode as well as your different timer modes here too. We have your metering mode where it's taking the light from. So you have your evaluative mode here. You have your spot shadow, spot highlight, spot, and center weighted for wherever it's taking the light from. We have your ratio size. 4:3 is going to be your most typical. Takes the most advantage of the space of the sensor, so that's what I would recommend. You have your color space. I would keep that in sRGB. your highlight and shadow control, your button functions, the setting that you would like your video to record at. I recorded at HD video at 60 frames for all of my footage to come together very nicely. We have your picture quality, so RAW, JPEG, or both. Your image stabilization, whether you would like that on or off. It's important to control that if the lens doesn't have it. Considering if you're on a tripod, you want to make sure that's turned off. And then your image stabilizer settings when it comes to your video as well. So you can do all of that from one single button here, which is pretty neat. Then we have our hot shoe here. This is the hot shoe cover. This is the hot shoe, where you would put an external flash on if you needed something better than the pop-up flash here. We have our mode dial here, which is going to control, of course, the different modes of your camera. The green auto mode is going to be automatic. This is going to make all the decisions for you. This is going to be a great mode to start in when you are adjusting to this camera, finding all the buttons and getting comfortable with it in your hands. And then when you want to start learning your camera, P mode is going to be a great mode to start in. P mode is going to be your program mode. This is going to allow you to change certain things like aperture or shutter speed, along with focusing mode, your ISO, those type of things, to a limit, while the camera figures out everything that you didn't change. So you'll be able to get a good shot no matter what, because it's going to say, oh, you want to change this? Well, I need to change this for you to get a good picture. So it's like auto, but it gives you more control, and it's a great learning tool. A mode is going to control the aperture and the lens. This is going to vary from lens to lens, of course. This is only a 4.8 to a 6.7, so not a ton of light, unfortunately. But I could control that if I wanted to on the A mode. You can open it wide up and let as much light in as possible, or you can close it up real small and get less light, but you'll get sharper image throughout, as a wide aperture does give you that nice blurry background, sharp foreground, or sharpness throughout by changing that setting. The S mode is going to be your shutter speed, the speed that the camera is taking the picture, and those are going to be expressed in fractions. Everything from 1/250th of a second to 1/500th of a second to 1/4000th of a second. And even long seconds long, you can do 1 second long, 5 seconds long, 30-second long exposures to capture light in a low light environment, pictures of the Milky Way, that type of thing. And then of course you have your M mode, which is going to be full manual. The camera's only doing what you tell it to. You have full control. And to learn more about your P, A, and S modes, I do have those in a playlist I'll attach at the end of the video. If you do want to learn more about those settings in detail, I'm still working on getting around to the manual settings, so bear with me on that. You have your video mode here, which is the video camera. However, you can record video in any of these other modes here, auto, P, A, S, and M. All you have to do is hit this red button here, hit it once to start recording, hit it again to stop recording. Pretty simple overall. Then we have the art mode, which is going to give you different art effects. You have different pop art modes, soft focus, light tones, grainy film, pinhole, diorama, cross process, sepia, dramatic tones, keyline, watercolor, vintage, partial color, which will allow you to pick a specific color out on your photo when the rest remain black and white, bleach bypass, and instant film. So you have different options there just on the art menu, which is really interesting, and it's a good way to get some creative shots if you get a little bored. Then we have the AP mode. This is the advanced photo mode. So you can do live composites, live time, multiple exposure, HDR, silent mode, panoramic mode, keystone compensation to avoid that distortion from happening, auto exposure bracketing, and focus bracketing as well. So a lot more advanced creative modes there to play in the AP mode. And then you have your scene modes here as well. This is going to be automatic, but you're telling the camera exactly what the situation is. You're saying, camera, I'm taking pictures of a person. I'm taking pictures of nightscapes, scenery, motion, indoors, close-ups. So it knows it's still going to automatically choose those settings, but it knows for a more specific subject, if you will. In the rest of the video, I'm going to be going over the menu and everything in the P mode, because that is going to allow you to see all of the menu items versus on automatic, it's very limited. So if you're following along, make sure that your mode dial's in your P mode when we go over the menu. Our adjustable wheels here, we have it here and here. This is going to adjust shutter speed and aperture. Some other settings here. I know that on the A and S mode, I know one of these is the exposure dial. That's going to allow you to make your picture a little bit brighter, a little bit darker, without changing any major settings, to hopefully fix any issues where it might make the color black too light or the color white too dark, like snow. We have our magnification button here to zoom in a little bit to make sure that we're in focus. This is not how it takes the picture. This is just to give you a little bit more distance in your viewing in the viewfinder or on the screen to see if you're really in focus or see if somebody's blinking, that type of thing, before you take the shot. And then these little holes here are actually going to be your microphones, or microphone. And these are going to take the audio when you do any video. You don't have any options to add a mic, unfortunately, because this camera wasn't really built to be a video camera. It's just a photo camera with video features. If you happen to be stuck in any screen, like the quick menu here, and you need to get out of it, you can just hit your shutter button halfway down and it'll get you right back into shooting mode. Anyhow, let's get into the back of the camera here. So you see we have a little wheel here. This is called the diopter. It's to control this viewfinder. So if you're looking through this and all of these numbers and everything that you see on the screen, you'll actually see in the viewfinder. If those are blurry at all, you'll actually just want to adjust that wheel until it's nice and clear, because everyone's eyes are just a little bit different. Here we have our auto exposure lock and our auto focus lock button. This will allow you to lock in focus or exposure when you are pointed at a specific subject that's maybe in a tricky lighting situation. We have our menu button here, which we're going to go over last. Our info button, which is going to change the display of what we see on the back of the camera, from different mic modes to ISO modes to just general information to blank or histogram, however you want it displayed. I like this display here because it'll give me the battery mode, it'll give me how many pictures or video I have left, and just like what my general settings are, which is really, really great. We have, if you hit the up button, that'll be the ISO. You can also get to that through your quick menu. If you hit the left button, that's actually going to be a shortcut to getting to your focus points, if you want to change those. The right button is going to be your flash settings when you have your flash popped up. So if you want it on red eye, no flash. If you want the flash on, that's what it's on right now. If it's popped up, it's fill and flash. If you hit the down button, this is again shortcut to your drive mode, also found in your quick menu. And we have your playback button here, which will show the last thing you took a picture of, which is that bunny, of course. And then the trashing out button in case you want to throw any of those away. And now we're going to go ahead and cover the menu. So what I love about the Olympus menu is that it has a very educational mode to it that'll actually give you a little pop-up and explain exactly what you're hovered over. So we're going to go and start in the first tab here, which is the first camera tab. It's our shooting menu. And to get into that, you're just going to go ahead and push the right button. You'll see that the first setting there is reset, which will allow you to reset your camera settings. If you do something funny and you have no clue what you did and there's no one that can help you out, your first step is really just going to be to reset your settings and see if that fixes that little glitchy issue that you've run across. Then we have picture mode. This, of course, will allow you to pick that color grade, if you will. If you want more vivid colors, eye enhance, muted, portrait, even monochrome or custom. But personally, I prefer natural to do all of those changes myself in editing. You have digital teleconverter, if you want to turn that on or off. So it will actually do a digital teleconverter for you and be able to give you even more distance if you wish. You have your metering modes here, which of course you can get to in your quick menu, which we went over. And a lot of these I might just breeze over because they already have them so well laid outside the camera, like our quick menu or even our shortcuts here. Autofocus illuminator, that's a little light that shines out in the front of the camera that allows the camera to focus a little bit easier, whether it's because of lack of detail or because it's too dark. It shines out a little light to help itself. So the next one there is going to be our second shooting menu. So we have image stabilizer, which you can turn on or off, same thing as you can do in the quick menu. We have our electric zoom speed, which this lens that comes with the camera does have an electronic zoom versus a manual one, like on the 75-300. You have your exposure when it comes to flash. You have your multiple exposure if you'd like to turn that on. Your interval shutter, your time lapse, which you can turn that on or off. Silent settings. You can do remote control flash mode if you have an external flash. The next tab here is going to be specifically for video, so if you would like to turn movie audio on or off, the record volume, the autofocus mode, which you generally want to have on continuous autofocus. That way it follows your movement and theirs. Stabilizer modes. For video, you have your electronic zoom speed, again, for the lens that comes with it, or if you happen to find another lens that has an electronic zoom. You have your video frame rate for your video, and video bit rate option as well. Then we go into the next tab here. This is going to be specifically for your playback, pictures you've already taken. If you want to do a slideshow with various effects in the camera by plugging your camera into your television screen or computer screen, showing it off to people. It's a great way to just turn on a slideshow, which is kind of nice. You have auto rotation. You can have that on or off. I like to have it on. Edit pictures in camera, although I don't recommend it. I just recommend using a program or even your phone these days. Resetting protection if you protect any of your images. Resetting sharing order, your device connection if you want to connect it to an app, which is actually the next video I'm recording is an how-to on that. So keep an eye out for that one. And then we get into one that's a little bit buried here, which is the little gear. This is going to be general settings throughout your camera. Starting in tab A as we continue to just move down, this is going to be your autofocus menu, so you can actually control the function of this button here. You have autofocus targeting pad. You have the face priority or eyes and face priority or off. Manual focus assist if you would wish to use that. Resetting the lens if you would like to do that with electronic zoom. You have down into the B tab, button and dials, so you can change button and dial functions. So your C1 tab is going to be display, sound, that type of thing. So you can do control settings, info settings, live view boost, flicker reduction for lights, display grid if you need help with composition, your peaking color, if you want to turn that beep on or off, HDMI settings, USB modes. Then the D1 is going to be your exposure, ISO, bulb settings. So exposure shift, ISO auto set if you want to set a limit, which I would definitely recommend. I actually set mine to be 200 to 6400 at max. The noise filter, which is preference. Personally, I will turn this off, that way I can do it myself, but it's up to you. Noise reduction, if you wanted to have it on auto or off. Like I said, I like to have more control in Lightroom, that's just me. You have D2, which is going to be bulb and your time timer. Your live bulb, if you want to see that, which is actually really cool. What live bulb will do is it'll allow you to see on screen as the image burns into the sensor, which is a really cool feature there. You have live time, and then you have composite settings. Then the E tab is going to be your custom modes for your flash, so you can do X sync, slow limit, all that fun stuff. F is going to control your white balance and your color. G is going to be for recording, so you can do your file name if you want to reset it, which I don't generally recommend. Editing your file name, copyright settings. H is going to be your electronic viewfinder, this guy right here. If you want that auto switch to be on, if you want to adjust that at all for temperature and brightness. I is going to be your utility, so pixel mapping, level adjust, touchscreen settings, your sleep mode to save the battery after 1 minute of not using it or whatever time you want to set it to, it just kind of powers down to a sleep mode. All you have to do is tap that shutter button to wake it up. And you have your certification as well. And then last but not least, we have our setup menu. So card setup is going to allow us to set up the card and the camera. And the reason that's important is because the card setup will allow you to format your card. Formatting is really important to do to avoid any lost pictures in the future, lost to your pictures now. What this does is it resets the card to how you purchased it and permanently erases everything on it. The reason you would want to do that after backing up your pictures and your videos to your computer naturally, I cannot stress that enough because then you will lose them forever if you don't. The reason you want to do that is every so often you'll want to clear your card so it keeps it healthy. Because when you just use the trash can button over and over again, all that does is it deletes the visible image but never the data. And when you overwrite that data so many times, it can actually cause corruption. It'll lock you out of your card, it'll start destroying your pictures. It's not fun, believe me. So keep that in mind because it's really important to get to know. Changing the time, changing the language, changing the brightness and color temperature. We have the record view, the Wi-Fi Bluetooth settings, which is what we're going to use when connecting to the camera through a smart device on the next video. And then we have your firmware as well, which can be upgraded as Olympus decides to release more firmware updates, just like you would do for your computer or phone. And that's that. When it comes to the Olympus E-M10 Mark IV, I wouldn't say it's a huge jump from the E-M10 Mark III, other than it may be faster thinking. It can take faster continuous drive for if you are doing any sort of light wildlife, or maybe you like to go to dog shows or something like that. I think it's probably perfect for that type of photographer that's just wanting the more recent of the technology. But I would say it's still an excellent camera. Olympus does a pretty fantastic job at what they do, and the 75-300 ain't too bad either to add to your collection for some distance. If you guys have any questions that I didn't cover about this camera, or you would like me to do a different model that you're interested in, please let me know in the comments below and I'll be sure to add them to my list. And until next time, keep your eye out for inspiration, Shutterbugs. Bye!